the NYU Silver School of Social Work, it is my deepest honor to welcome Councilmember Yusef Salaam to our university and school. I cannot think of a better speaker for a conversation on reimagining justice. As a member of the Exonerated Five and an elected leader of New York City's Council District 9, your remarkable life trajectory personifies both the perils of our justice system and the possibilities when we are willing to examine that system and recognize the potential of everyone who finds themselves within it. You have emerged from a crushing circumstance during your formative years to thrive as a family man, father, poet, activist, and transformational speaker. You continue to use your platform to share your story with others and educate the public about the impacts of mass incarceration and police brutality within our justice system. You are inviting us all to reimagine justice when you advocate for criminal justice reform, prison reform, and the abolition of juvenile solitary confinement and capital punishment. Traveling prevents me from being there today as you share your insights with our audience and our amazing Evolving Justice colleagues, Dr. Jay James and our adjunct assistant professor, Terrance Coffiee. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart for participating in this important forum. Thank you.
Yes.
Again, we'd like to welcome each of you. We also, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to those who may be tuning in via virtually from Texas Tech, USC, Harvard, where I sent all this out. So social workers from across the country have tuned in, and I also want to definitely give a shout out to so many of my wonderful students who are here tonight. Keep it going. And again, we really like to invite you to this conversation with my partner in crime, Dr. Kirk J. James, who has been one of the leading advocates on the work here at NYU, so who has been a mentor and a guide to me in my work and all that we do as we continue to reimagine justice.
Thank you, TC. Welcome everyone. You know, as we were thinking about this really historic night with the councilman, TC and I were talking, and he said, TC, like, what are we going to talk about tonight, right? And you know, TC, he goes 1,000 miles an hour, and he's like, we're going to hit on this, we're going to hit on this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And I was like, yeah, that's dope. But I was like, yeah, we're going to do that. But I was like, yo, we gotta also be a little real, right? Because it's really real right now in this world, right? Like, we live in a world where a lot of these things that we're talking about is life for so many people, right? There's such a privilege for us to be here in a space where we can feel safe. We may be a little uncomfortable, but we're safe to have these conversations, you know, to be able to even have the privilege to be able to reimagine justice in a world where people are dying is not lost, right? And what's also not lost is that there's always possibility. And when I think about this panel, you know, it's like you have 3 black men who have had contact with the carceral system. And for people who came of age in my generation, everyone will tell you about this man and this man's experience, because this was our experience. This was the 1 in 3 black men. This was the 40 of us in the back of a bus. Life is a short, you shouldn't be so rough. You know, this was what Tupac was talking about when he was like, yo, who would think in elementary, I'd see the penitentiary, right? This was it, right? And for me, I knew that really clear when in 1994 I got arrested. And similar, like, they couldn't see your humanity, they didn't see my humanity. And I knew that when the judge sentenced me to life at 19 years old, I knew what I was going to be about. So the fact that we are here today in these positions is testament to possibility. And that shouldn't be lost. And that's the starting point I wanted to start us with, right? Because we often start with the deficit. But look at the strength. And it wasn't just here. It was in our communities. It was our mothers. It was our fathers. It was our cousins. Because none of us got here by ourselves. It was all the people that were willing to believe in us when the system didn't believe in us. Can we honor that strength? Can we honor those mothers? So I really wanted to make that the starting point, because this is a world where it feels overwhelming. But you know what? We've been overwhelming. We've been in those dark spaces many times, and we continue to come out. And we got to believe that we're going to come out of this even stronger, even better, even more human, even with more love. So I'm really honored to be here, to have this conversation, but I also felt like it was really important to set the tone for what this is. Because many people are feeling hopeless. And I tell you that hope against all odds is the ancestral baton. We can never, ever drop it.
You see why you're on that? So we are honored to introduce to you what? Advocate, leader, poet, father, councilman, one of the most recognized figures in America as we discuss criminal justice reform in America and wrongful convictions. Councilman Yusef Salaam. So Jay was absolutely right. I knew my students were going to be here, and I wanted to go micro, meso, macro levels. Let's go. So, Councilman, we're going to pass this mic, and hopefully, I don't know if we have to continue to use it, but we really want this to be a very intimate conversation, particularly with each of you as students and future advocates and social workers that will be going into the spaces to understand the values on which we live and execute within the work that we do. One of the things I always show with my students, we are human before we become social workers. We're empathetic. We are, all those qualities. The field of social work in the field, it just gives us the parameters in which we work, and we're able to engage with the communities that have been impacted. So, Councilman, I think that hearing your own words, being here tonight, what has this journey from the Central Park Five, the exonerated Five, advocate, leader, to now political figure, one of the most recognized political figures in the country?
I told we was ready at NYU.
Thank you for coming. Good night. As I was sitting here, I pulled out my phone because I wanted to understand from a layperson's perspective exactly what social work is. So of course I went to Google. And it says, very interestingly, social work is work carried out by trained professionals with the aim of helping people who have social disadvantages or personal problems. Now, I know it's a lot more than that, but that's a lot just to think about. I think about my journey as my professor at Hunter College. When I came home from prison, I had the fortunate opportunity to go to Hunter College at the urging of a friend of mine. And she said, you gotta meet this professor, Donna Richards. So I'm looking all over this campus for this professor, Donna Richards. I can't find this professor anywhere. And then my friend said, oh, she changed her name to Dr. Marimba Ani. And I talk about her in my book. I'm like, wait, that doctor, what? Just mind blowing. But as soon as she said that, I immediately found her. And I thought about, they forgot about God. I thought about how there's words that are created to give meaning to things, created and birthed out of our community, out of our minds, in the context of lack. Words like technology, right? Words like politrics. These are words that we all know what they mean. But now on the other side of the curtain, like, wow. So you looked at me, perhaps from the beginning of my existence, and calculated all kinds of mathematical possibilities and stopped at, well, he's going to be dead on jail before he reaches the age of 21. And that's such a thing that in some ways has life in our communities. But when I was in prison, the thought also came to me like, hold on. Like if we had the choice to decide for ourselves that we were going to be dead or in jail before we reached the age of 21, who would choose that? You go into any black community and you ask that question, how many of you have ever heard you're going to be dead or in jail before you reach the age of 21? Almost every single hand is raised. But then when you ask the follow-up question, if you had the choice to choose whether you would be dead or in jail before you reach the age of 21, how many of you would choose that? And I'm saying this because when we do the knowledge and understand what's really going on, the calculation was, this family, microcosm of the macrocosm, because I'm not unique, this family followed tradition and named their child 7 days after they were born. And they gave that child the name that they would respond to and the name that they would be called. The meaning of the name is God will increase the teacher with justice and peace. I was born with that name, right? So 15, I turned 15. Like, my birthday's in February. Like April 19th, 1989, I had just turned 15. And then the whole attention of the world, it seemed, focused in on me. And it was so much of a tremendous pressure that the only way I can describe it, for us to be able to kind of quickly just codify it, is that they wanted me to arrest my own development. They wanted me to put a stop to what my ancestors had put in motion through sacred time that we can tap into through Sankofa. They wanted me to arrest that development. They wanted me to have a ripple that hindered everything that would come from me to disallow for whatever it was that my ancestors put out there in the world to be stopped. Look at God. We know man plans, and God is the best of plans. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to see it, though, to be able to witness it, to be able to say, impossible. And then you're like, hold on. I'm possible? It comes heavy. Because we had to say that every day while we were in them prisons. When they were trying to make us believe that we were the scum of the earth. To make us believe that we were the poster children of deviance. To make us believe that we were a lost cause and shouldn't even aspire to be anything other than dead or in jail before we reach the age of 21. And so, by the way, I didn't come to this while I was growing through what I was going through. Because while I was growing through it, I couldn't look back. I couldn't. It was like, it was too painful. You got to sweep stuff under the rug and keep on moving and keep on pressing. Because if you deal with what you had to deal with, really? That's why I know all of us deal with mental health. Every single one of us is dealing with mental health challenges. But reimagining it all is giving yourself permission that was already given to you. Like a lot of people, they literally are like, they're literally like, if you know, I know we're in 2024, so some of the younger folks might not know what double dutch is. but the young men, we watch the double dutch. You know, but imagine every single one of us, like I don't know what the double dutch folks, the ones who are doing it's like sacred geometry. It's not even, because they're not just like, okay, let me just swing this rope. I'm in sync with you. I'm moving the rope, and sometimes you're looking at the rope and you're like, that rope ain't even moving straight. How is the rope? And then the person gets in, they look like they posing for photos. And, you know what I'm saying? They saying what's up to their folks. Imagine that same thing, and you got people who are literally standing on the side of life, and they're looking at whoever appears to be in charge, and they're asking, they're raising their hands to ask permission. Can I jump in now? Les Brown said that every single one of us was one of over 400 to 500 million options. And we were chosen. So why are we waiting? Why are we trying to ask permission to live the life that has already been gifted us? I'm gonna pause right there, because yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for sharing so vulnerably. You put some things in perspective there. It's like, well, I know what it felt like for me, to experience the carceral system, and I think many people are feeling what it feels like now to experience carceral spaces and systems, even on campuses, right? And yet, your experience was, and I think you put it really gracefully, right? It was really fucked up in ways that other people don't really see and experience, because I do remember 1989, and for people that remember 1989, yeah, it was real.
But you know what?
Hold on one second, brother. I
I only wanted to say this because as messed up, as terrible as it appears, you know and I know, and you know, and all of us know, that it's only because the TV screen was focused on me at the time. There were so many of us experiencing the same type of system
Absolutely.
issue. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because, yes, it's like, it's almost like God is like, I'm about to show you that I'm God. I'm about to show off. You think that you know what this is, but I'm gonna use this one example to prove to you that what's real and what's not. So I just wanted to kind of,
Yeah, no, 100%,
You know.
that's real. But yeah, I'm asking you this question because I think that, you know, you were in a particular situation, and we need to honor that, right? Like, a lot of us have been in situations, you were in a particular situation, and I think that, you know, especially for social workers, we're always thinking about, like, oh my God, how can I help somebody, right? Like, how can I help somebody? There's no resources here, you know? And I'm just curious as to, I know, you know, you speak about, I hear your faith and I understand that power, but help people to understand, like, what were the things that, who were the people that helped you? What were the, like, for somebody who's thinking about, how can I support someone who's impacted by the carceral space, who's facing this, you know, I hear my students talk about all the time, like, I feel powerless. And I would just love for you to speak about, you know, what were feeding the possibilities for you? Because I hear those possibilities, right? No matter how dark it was, I hear you talk about the possibilities. What fed those possibilities for you?
my goodness. I wanna maybe just read just this little ending of my introduction to my very first book, and then maybe try to answer.
Please, thank you.
Try to answer that. Most of the poetry written in this book was written between the age of, between the times of 1989 and 1997. There are pieces that were written after that, but the bulk of the material took shape while I was in prison. I've always called this body of work Words of a Man because the social and justice systems weren't treating me like a man. From the unbelievable accusation from the start to the wild convictions of the media, to Donald Trump's full-page ad calling for the state to kill us, to the final judgment and imprisonment. The system wasn't treating me as if I was a man. So because I knew I was a man, a human being, and one of God's favorites, I had to remind myself. And these words were a big part of that. Here I was at the beginning of this whole bid, and I had to grow up very, very fast. But I wanted to share this work specifically because I wanted people to know that when you find yourself in so-called dark places, there's always a light somewhere in the darkness. And even if that light is inside you, you can illuminate your own darkness and shine your light on the world. So, I was 15 in 1989. I'm a few months in after turning 50. And for me, I had to taste that. I had to understand like what that meant. Like when I hear a Nas say, I'm in my second childhood or second lifetime, because we weren't expected to survive. What I remember was all along the way being reminded, being like, it's one thing to be given tools to work things out, but it's another thing when the people who are coming into the space that you're in know you can't do anything but be reminded. So you have to, in many ways, develop. Sometimes I pop in on social media, and there was a post that I just saw. I thought this was like a really cool post. The girl is up there, she got a bathing suit on, and the person says, "Can you tell us what's the most expensive thing that you're wearing?" And she said, "My brain." I was like, damn. Had to watch that like twice, you know what I'm saying? But the mind the mind. I wrote this, and it's called Heartbeat. We are at war, the bulk of which will not be physical, the bulk of which is mental. Psychological warfare to make me accept you as better, like your ice is cooler or water wetter. They're holding court in the streets. This time, court will be sweet. We will not accept defeat. The signal will be your heartbeat. I'm saying all of this. These are things that if you look at it on the outside, you're like, it's just a brain, it's just a finger, it's just the nose, it's just the heart. Man, if your heart turns cold, if your heart turns black, if your mind is altered by the adulteration that used to have warning labels even in TV. So I had to listen on a visit, with however many visits I got, I had to listen in the time of the visit. This is what I need you to do. When you get an opportunity and you feel your worst, go immediately as fast as you can to a mirror and look at yourself. What happens when we feel bad? We look down. You might bump into a meter, all kind of stuff, but you feel good. You're looking up, realizing that the sun is shining, even though it might be a cloudy day, but the sun is shining above the clouds. When you recognize that you're in a space that you could be broken, and you look at yourself in the mirror, you hold your gaze and you tell yourself, you got this. You can do this. What's happening? What's happening? And this is like some spiritual other stuff. You are putting out there in the universe energy that you can latch back onto at any moment, because you're learning how to deal with the most wicked of systems. When you think about systemic racism from yesteryear, man, that dude took out a full-page ad and called for the state to kill us. Racism from today, well, it's still that, but from him. But it's become institutionalized. That's not what we meant. And so Malcolm is right. El-Hajj Wali Shabazz was right. That English becomes a language of lies and trickery. Because they can say something and then you say, well, what was that? And they go, no, that's not what I mean. You took it wrong. But if I said to my wife, I love you, if I was speaking another language, like she knows we've been together for too long for me to say I love you and her to be like, what kind of love, right? But if I was speaking Spanish to her and I said I love you, if I said I love you like I love my phone, she would know it, because that's a different word. In English, you could just say this, and there's a connotative and a denotative meaning behind it all. But I'm saying those moments of catching what they're trying to do. My mother said that I will never forget this. I will echo this everywhere I go and remind people that my mother said it, and I'm thankful that she's still here for me to put the attribution right back where it came from. My mother said, and this is when I was in the precinct, my mother said, they need you to participate in whatever it is they're trying to do. Do not participate. Refuse. Like, my mother wasn't in the interrogation room with me. The beauty of when they see us was, Ava DuVernay capturing the energy and strength that my mother has to teach us how we are to advocate for our children. And that advocacy was as if she was in the interrogation room with me. That she walked in there, looked at the officer that was trying to get me to say something against the truth. And she shamed them for good measure. And for me, it was like I was in the Matrix watching it all. And I'm so appreciative of that. Because had she not told me that, I might have broke. They were telling every single one of us, like they always tell every single one of us, you a good boy. You know, so-and-so in the other room they saying you did this. We know you didn't do it. But you were good, we want to let you go. But you gotta give us something. I didn't do it. You know, you could go, you wanna go home, right? They're not telling you when you're gonna go home. Like me and Corey, we came to the precinct together. I came home 7 years later, he came home 13 years later. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a whole like technology. But all of that and all through it, it's like you gotta be able to be a quick study, read between the lines, try to figure out what's the meaning behind the meaning and the inference and all of this stuff, because sometimes you might not be able to say what it is that needs to be said to the person that you're trying to say it to. Like I had to learn that everything around me was moving. Even the seemingly inanimate objects. The brick walls that I walked down as I walked down the corridor going to the mess hall at Clinton Dannemora, tapping my knuckles on the wall. Same thing, Harlem Valley, tapping my knuckles on the wall. These things that are part of creation are moving. But my connection was like, I need you to help me to allow this thing to become a weapon, because carrying weapons is against the rules and regulations. So therefore I need to turn my hand, in case I need to use it, into bricks. This is the only hand that the knuckles is bigger than this one. The knuckles is darker on this one than this one. I would walk around just wrapping my hand like, man, if they try to catch me, I gotta take some of them. Thank God I didn't have to go that route. But a lot of us, we were faced with that. But those things, very specific. Look at yourself, hold your gaze, will yourself that you're gonna do it, that you meditation. A step above and beyond what you can understand in a book. How you can will and participate in what they call the law of attraction. So I tell college students all the time, especially first year, I love when I'm seeing the first year students because they're like, what the heck is this? I gotta remind them, y'all not neophytes. Y'all been in school before. You know what I'm saying? Like, you survived. This is the next level. Take everything that you had and use it on this level too. But my friend Les Brown again. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So I had to be able to learn how to see it. And so I tell them, you have to see yourself, in my case, free. Why? Because on those visits, in the short amount of time that my mom or my loved ones had to have with me, they might have said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I had to understand, what does that mean? I found out that even though your body can be physically in bondage, wherever your mind goes, your body follows. You know how wild, like that's crazy, next level, haha, you thought you won. You thought you got me locked up. Joke's on you. I'm in a whole nother stratosphere doing the work so that when I finally catch up to myself, because I wasn't completely aware of this while I was growing through it. Like when I finally catch up to myself, I'm gonna need to be a quick study. Because when you get out of this place, you're gonna be a grown man with a 15-year-old mind. And because you're gonna be a grown man, you're gonna be embarrassed to ask a person, because when I came home, and I know some of y'all remember, we had tokens. Put the token in the turnstile, put it in, you walk right through. I came home and people was using Metro cards. I'm looking, I'm like, so you know, from the 5% world, you do the knowledge. Study like your watch. Gotta go into the machine. All right, some of these dollars they put in, they trying to. Okay, that worked. All right. Yeah. I'm watching all of this. Now they get their Metro card. That ain't work. That ain't work. I'm looking at all of this stuff, and what was so crazy is I was watching this, and then it was, my time was getting short. I'm getting closer to now it's gonna be my time to use this machine to get my Metro card. And I realized that somebody was right on my back. I'm on 125th Street in Lexington Avenue. Y'all know, I mean, like old Lexington, like. Right. I mean, it still feels like that, but I'm talking about even before that. I'm like Pathmark was still there.
Right.
That's real.
Yeah.
So I'm there, somebody like right there, and my hair felt up, and I didn't know how to like. I was like, yo, this guy is like, he's in my space, and I didn't want to. Like, you know, because that's like PTSD, right? Like, you could have an episode.
Disorder.
Yeah. But I was like, what do I do? And I was like, and I'm looking like, trying to, you know. Finally, I figured it out. I said, yo, man, I just came home. I mean, those who know what I'm talking about. This dude backed way up. My bad, brother. Welcome home, you know what I'm saying? But I was like so relieved. But it's all of that. It's like the lessons that you might only have, like, you might only have a word. That's all. Right? My grandmother, when she would write me the words on the outside of the envelope, I never asked. I never got an answer because she had a stroke and lost the ability to speak. So when I realized that I needed to ask her about this, she wasn't even able to tell me about it. And then she departed. But when I remember, I still have these envelopes. The envelopes would be addressed to Master Yusef Salaam. But check this out. Y'all know. Every single letter we get is open. That means every single letter we get, they read it and then they gave it to us. So they're reading, this letter is to Master Yusef Salaam. Then I'm getting it and I'm reading Master Yusef Salaam. And it might have just been a Blue Mountain card. And I'm not saying that that's insignificant, but I'm saying when I did the knowledge on that, like, she was telling them who they had, and she was telling me whose I was. She was trying to remind me yes, I'm doing time, but this is sacred time. You are right now in this world at this time. You need to know who you are, why you are, what you are, where you are. All of that. So now in Sankofa, which is deep, Sankofa is the principle that says go back and get it. Go back and get what? Whatever you need. But imagine the profundity of, you mean like the DJ who was cut off from the history of the griot or the jelly, figured out how to scratch. So in that process, you mean I can scrub back and forth through time? Like, what does that mean? That means that when I heard them tell me, live in the future tense of self, I had to understand, what does that mean? So if I can live in the future tense of self, then that means that I can live in the past, present, future tense of self. I can take the past and build on it. Or if I did anything that I didn't like, don't throw yourself a pity party. That's one of the reasons why our people have so, like, the pain is tremendous. They remember some of the things that they did when they was on crack, when they was out of their mind. Damn, I sold my mama's brand new TV. Not me, I'm just saying, you know, I heard some stories. I heard some stories. You know, people selling the home down to the pipes. Because back then, like, copper pipes was in the homes. They ain't got no copper pipes in the homes anymore. But we just heard Facebook executive say he built his home with copper pipes. What's in the copper? And why is he using it to, you see what I'm saying? Like, all of this stuff. But those things, those secrets, those things that I was able to realize that I had to work on this, so that when I came out of the womb of America, I didn't call it the belly of the beast.
Womb of America.
They wanted it to be the belly of the beast. I needed to make it the womb of America. So when I was reborn back into the world, all of those things that I had deposited in the future tense of time itself, when it came time for me to get it, to hold on to it, to pull down to further define, articulate, pontificate, all of that, like, get into the science of, man, I'm not, it's not lost on me. Like, a lot of people look at me, and, you know, my legislative and budget director is here with us in the audience. He's been around a lot of the stuff that's been going on before being elected, all of that stuff. And I swear he can tell you, people think that I'm walking around with a magic wand. They're like, he is him. He got it like that. No. You know what happened? You know, you remember when we was like, Barack made it.
Right.
Do you know that Barack Obama is not the totality of the excellence that is inside of self? He's just scratching the surface. So when people look at me, I'm like, you really want to see a miracle? Let's organize and lift this mountain. Because even in the political process, there has never been 100% participation. And so we look at the political process as people who are now returned citizens, right? And we know, as we do the knowledge, the 13th Amendment is damning Section 1, but Section 1 really don't have no power. It's just telling you what it is. Section 2, Congress shall have the power to enforce this article through appropriate legislation. now you gotta realize, well, also the concerted effort to disallow us to participate. That's because non-participation is participation. On all levels, like I need my folks to go into the jury system
Yes, yes.
so that the comedians can stop making jokes like, they told me I was gonna be judged by a jury of my peers, and I'm trying to see when my man Bobo Raheem and all of them at. Like, who these folks? Because we, in some ways, we shirk our responsibility. But we gotta know, we gotta know, with a certainty that this system that they are trying to make us believe we can somehow circumvent. This is the system, but we can't take our eyes off the prize when we get in there.
You know, the entire time you were speaking, so many theories, particularly the labeling theory, it just hit me as when, most people know I'm a big fan of James Baldwin. And Baldwin talks about this idea of a society that wanted you to come to terms with mediocrity. And we have this thing called the dominant narrative. And it's internalized not only by what I believe as an individual, because this is where the idea of, y'all know I'm a big fan of Tupac too, now you know. So mama said I'm gonna be a thug. Because the society in itself had defined my ability to navigate. Remember that part when we talked about in class when Baldwin says all the social constructs that surround me, the projects, the trash, the dirt, my ability to navigate. It tells me you are only allowed to go this far. This is what you're defined as. So as we do this work as social workers and we engage with these impacted communities, we must also understand that these very communities have internalized this belief system about themselves where all I can be is a thug. Trust me, I know I'm tatted up for real. Because when we have this conversation, I'm sitting here with Dr. J and I'm listening to Yusef. It's just searing through me. It's searing through me through those 19 years of incarceration. I got to go back to something that Jay said, because as we're having this conversation, I remember, Park had another song say all around the world the same song. So if we look at the demographics of the communities that most of us service, we'll notice that they're all in a certain community at a certain area. Just watch it. One of the things Jay mentioned was that, for me, and this was, I was impacted by that internalization that this is all I'm ever going to be. Came to terms with that. So when we start looking at how do we begin to engage with those individuals in those communities and those that are impacted by this carceral system, there comes a point where I believe that in the work that we do, we begin to rewrite the narrative. Also, what you talked about that was very clear to me was the strength perspective and what your mother still do. Because I used to get the letters from my mom and them. It's just something about that reminded me of my humanity.
That's right. That's right.
So I think that through our work as social workers in this agency, in this field, that we really begin to look at communities that have internalized this belief system, this narratives, and particularly for social workers, I think it's very important. I always tell us to check our bias. What do we think of that community? What do we believe about those young black men back in 1989 when they called them and the 4-page ad was out, and then in 1996, y'all know, but this is my world. The 96 crime bill came out, and the label was super predators. And the media portrayed these young black men across America as these animals running the streets. what was our belief system when we engaged in that? How did that narrative shape policy? You see how we got here? Because all around the world, you know, we can go back to Hillary Clinton, you know, talk about, you know, her campaign run, but we always got, you know, let's not confuse the politics with the reality. So I think, Councilman, particularly when you talked about coming home and we started seeing all this new experience that you were encountering and looking back when we haven't used 5 senses, now I got to look back and try to figure out what type of work are is your administration now? You've given us that journey, and we're here. How do we begin to build policy that embraces the understanding that we're all discussing here now when we're talking about the reentry process? With over 2.1 million people incarcerated in this country, with I think 600,000 coming home each year. And right here in New York State, 42% that are coming home claiming, you know, homeless, not having the allocation of funds to meet the mental health challenges while incarcerated. How do we begin to invest in services within correctional institutions and in these spaces for these communities, for this community who's coming, as we say, back home?
Wow. Wow. So you just said something that I'm gonna use as a precondition. You just said we gotta, as social workers, oftentimes also check ourselves. You know, like, how do we feel about the communities that we're going into? What biases are popping up? Things that you're finding out and learning about self. And I'm saying that, but this is it's on a completely different spectrum. I wanted to start there, but like take it into the reality of we have to begin our work by first knowing that the system that we are fighting to that we are fighting to call to participate with us in what I've been calling righteous collaboration. The system was designed in the way that it is operating by the people who created it to operate the way it's operating. So I was tapping my phone because I wanted to make sure. You said Baldwin, and I love Baldwin. Oh man, I got a quote right here, and I just called it the victim, right? And he says the victim who is able to articulate the situation of the victim has ceased to be the victim. He or she now becomes the threat. The threat to what? The threat against the very system that was designed, like we used to say, man, the system is broken.
Not at all.
Me and Brother Five, we've been like moving and
Coin that.
I'll never forget one of the elders said to me, you know, I said, you know, the system is alive and well. They said, pardon me, brother. System is alive and sick. And so from there on and then on, I said, I'm gonna say that. Because the system, the way that the system was created, even when even at the overwhelming, mind-boggling reality, that the 13th Amendment is right there, right? We could read it, we can understand it, we could dissect it, we can like do the knowledge on it, but consider this. The Constitution of the United States, when it was created, when it was being ratified, it was designed when black and brown people were considered 3/5 of a human being. They have never reformed that. So, what we are really working to do is to tap into the human potential of the possibility of the future of what could be by working on what's now. So, quick example, a young woman, this might have been like 2014, a young woman, we might have been at UCLA, but we was in California, USC, UCLA, we was somewhere in California on a campus. The only film that we had was the Central Park 5 documentary. And we were having some technical difficulties to get it to play on the projector that they had. But the room that we were in was standing room only. It was packed. They had brought in faculty, students, and the community. And one part of the community that was there was represented by the cadets. And so a young girl stands up, Yusef, I got a question. She says, I'm a cadet. I'm 13. I want to become a cop. What advice can you give me?
Oh my.
Her face, your face, that was my face. But I had to quickly catch my face. Because see, I've been taught you gotta think 5 times before you say something. You gotta taste the words. You gotta The Last Samurai and oh man, Doctor Strange. Both movies. There's a scene in both movies that resemble each other. Not really, but the part of breaking reality was what is resembled. And so the part in Doctor Strange was when the guy went up to the mountain in Tibet to see the person, and he was talking to her like, what, I don't understand, and she hit him. And his soul jumped out of his body. He was looking at his body like the Hulk.
She did it
And
too.
then he came back. What the? Now, The Last Samurai. The guys came around him, and it appeared that he was in a battle. Got his sword out, fighting, da 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 da. And then it was like beautiful. It went back to his state of his stand. He was standing there, and so what happened was he had already projected, if then this, what if, maybe, okay, I got it. Now I'm ready. And it happened like that. We are at war. Politically, there is no way to circumvent the process. So you have to participate and get people to at least agree to participate in righteous collaboration. Because you're tapping right back into, this is not just your job, you're a human being doing a job. Don't forget your humanity. So when you're out there doing your job, don't be like the DA or the assistant district attorney who hated us. And at some point she stopped just doing her job. She hated us so much. This wasn't a job anymore. This was like vengeance. She was like, I'm gonna get you for them. Why? Because you look like you're guilty. Yeah, I know, innocent until proven guilty. You guilty. And I'm a proof. I love the fact that they fought so hard. Because that makes the victory even more beautiful. I can say right now that the Central Park jogger case is a love story between God and his people. I can say that it's a story of a people who were buried alive and forgotten, and the system forgot we were seeds. I can say that they built a fire to consume us, but they forgot the owner of the heat.
Come on now.
That's what I mean. I can say like that. That's how deep it is. It's so deep that when the command is given, shoot them. There's not going to be a projection in time, and you're going to come back and no. It's going to be a pause because you're going to be like, they ain't hit me. You're going to turn around and realize there's no one there to take the order because they tapped into their own humanity. That young girl that stood up and asked me that question, I'm thinking about all of this. And I tried to give her some of my best stuff because what I realized, which blew my mind in that moment of thought, was that this was not a cop. She represents the future of policing. Some would say, defund the police. That word was, that term was birthed, and as soon as it was birthed, the Fourth Estate took the microphone and began to define and give meaning and definition that caused people to be afraid. When what was being birthed, and I'm talking about this is all of this is policy stuff. This is stuff that we're working on, like actively trying to figure out how do we create legislation to do this. Like being able to realize that the future of policing is being asked of a person who was run over by the spike wheels of justice. What advice can you give me? It sounds a lot softer now. How can I be, and this is the mayor words, how can I be a guardian of society? Because that term sounds like we want more of those. We want that young girl who stood up in that audience like others to be an example, a prime example of a Dr. King saying, when you find your purpose in life, do it as if God himself called you to do it at this very moment. Mm-hmm. She's asking me, she's not saying, what should I do, Yusef? She's saying to me, I want to become an officer who protects and serves all. I want to be a guardian of society. And I found this vibration resonating with me, and I'm only 13. What advice would you give? I'm like, man, can we replicate you? Like, we need more of you. We need good people, good-natured folks. And we know them. Like we met. I was just in Buffalo the other day. And I met the officer who they fired. I think she was a detective. They fired her because she told the other officer, those of us who saw this on social media, she told the other officer, take your hand from around his neck. Oh, they let her go. So now she's trying to figure out, how do we create legislation? They are the threat. Not that Dr. James Baldwin, I'm gonna give him that, right? Not that Dr. James Baldwin is saying that they become a threat, but to the system. No, we need more people to be yes men and go along to get along and toe the line, and no, this is not politics as usual. I didn't study political science. I went to prison. I'm still in the classroom of that learning 35 years later. And now I've been gifted with an opportunity to participate behind the curtain. And it has to be, like, we can't shirk those responsibilities. We gotta look at this from a expert chess player's perspective. How do I now move into the future and come right back to the present to begin to create those things? Because we need it. I got 10 children. Some of them are girls. The eldest is 28. 2 boys on the top, 1 boy at the bottom. This work is for them because their children's children are gonna know how to break every generational curse. And that's what, and it's weird because sometimes when I talk about the political aspect of things, I know I'm not answering the question like a politician. You know, we're about to do legislation on such and such and make sure that all the trash in our community is picked up, and you know, I know the bills and all of that and the potholes and you know, the fact that they made the buildings with substandard products that's no longer even in existence. We gotta use that knowledge and now figure ways forward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also let me say this, I'm glad you recognized Dr. James Baldwin, but I also want to recognize and say now, I did say Councilman Yusef Salaam. I should need to correct myself. Councilman
Dr. Yusef Salaam.
Would love to kind of open it up to folks, right, so we can have more of a community conversation. But I want to say though, right, like I'm sitting here and I hope it's not lost just like how much you're sharing, you know, because I think that to your point, right, like you're not speaking like a politician, and I feel that could get lost on people. But you know, when I think about this conversation that we're having, you are just really, you're touching on all those touch points, right, in really beautiful ways. You're talking about like the power of community. You're talking about the power of words, the power of like belief, imagination. You know, I think when I think about it, liberation, I tell this to folks all the time, it starts with imagination. You know, we have to be able to imagine something different. We have to be able to imagine something different of ourselves. We have to be able to imagine something different of this world. And you know, you are not just talking about this abstractly, right? Like you're showing us, like, hey, here's what it looked like. You know, here's what words can have impact, right? So I just really hope for folks that, you know, you don't really lose that. Like I'm here like, whoa, you know, I didn't expect this tonight. So I'm just really like grateful for, you know, the humanity and wisdom that you are like really affording us. And you know, just really want to get into open it up, but really want to honor the concept of Sankofa, which has been so important to me. And you know, I saw one of our brothers even earlier, he had on the Sankofa ring, right? and I was like, yo, right. Thank you.
Also the ring for vigilance.
Yeah, you know, thank you, my brother. And just really, again, you know, I think for so many of us doing this work, we can often feel like these things are new. And I think that is what creates sometimes that overwhelming, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? You know, and I remember so much of our elders were like, yo, we've been doing this. You know, like, and that's what Sankofa is, right? It's this idea that everything is built on a history. We're built on a history, we're built on a foundation, and we have been intentionally cut off from that. And I think it's important to know that, you know, when we go back to those histories are rooted in humanity, they're rooted in love. A lot of practices we call restorative practices.
Yeah.
These are indigenous ways of life outside of white supremacy. You know, right? We're talking about like living as human beings, like it's a practice that is like, whoa, you know? But that's how white supremacy is conditioned and normalized this experience. So, you know, you're really breaking things down that I hope people are really, you know, just holding on to. So thank you so much. Would love to just, again, like open it up to folks. I don't know how we want to do this. If we have a mic we want to pass around. But yeah, please.
I have a simple question.
Yeah.
I don't think I need a mic. I think I'm loud. You talked about your past and where you at now. What made you stay and what made you run?
So, just further define what made me stay.
Stay in New York.
Stay.
Like, yes, what
So-
made you stay? A lot of people come home and then say, you know what, forget about this, I'm not looking back.
So let me. So you know, it's funny. Like as a point of opposition, I was heckled because I have a house in Georgia. Right? Nothing wrong with that. My wife is in Georgia right now. But I was heckled because it was like, he don't even live in New York. Like, I'm a New Yorker for real. Like, like I remember when,
How could you?
like, I remember, like, I grew up in Schaumburg Plaza,
Right, off the block.
like 110th and 5th Avenue. Like, I'm really, when I hear people say 41st Street and they uptown, I know they talking about 141st.
Right.
And if they said 141st, that's New Harlem. That's not Harlem, right? So, for me, I had to be convinced that I was needed back here. Because I've been traveling the world as a motivational speaker. I'm actually 20 plus years in motivating people. And I'm like, I love that. I feel like that's what I'm born to do. And then I realized, you know, Keith Wright, he came down to Georgia. He came to like see me. He was like, no, Yusef, we need you in New York. Like, you are our modern day Nelson Mandela. This is what he said this to me. And I'm like, whoa. Like I had to consider, consider is not even the right word. I had to realize that part of the, like I come back to New York often. It's just like I could either drive up or take a flight. Like flights for me was so easy because like I'm a platinum honors member, like get a regular flight and be upgraded to first class. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like how my travels are, right? But you gotta understand that New York City, for me, and Central Park in particular, is the scene of the crime.
Right.
There's no yellow tape, but that's the scene of the crime. This whole city, this is the scene of the crime. So when I was like really understanding why I needed to come back, and I needed to come back with buckets of water to put out some fires. Like I was all right. Literally, I'm like literally when who was it? Rick Ross was talking about Maybach music.
Yeah.
Like I was listening to that in my Maybach. Like literally, like I just sold the Maybach. See, a lot of the stuff I was like, you know what? I had to realize that there's so many great sacrifices that I had to make because life wasn't over yet. It's not time to kick up my feet and every time I would look out the window in Georgia, I'm like, man, this look like The Simpsons. Like literally, like I got photos on my phone that I took from the bedroom that was, my bedroom is bigger than this room. To come back to New York.
And then rename the scene of the crime.
With people talking about, you know, I just bought my apartment, and on social media when they were showing it, it was like they had a crate, a pillow, and it was like, I got mine for $2,500, you know. And I was like, it's just a bedroom. My wife, I literally was on FaceTime with her a few minutes ago before we walked in, and she was in the bedroom. Like, I'm like, what you doing? She said, oh, you know, I'm getting up. I gotta go to the office. Like, the office is next to But what made me really, really, really run was understanding that it was not over yet. Like, this journey was not the finish line. Like, even now, city council, this is not, I don't believe this is the finish line. All of these things are things that I have to participate in order to bring about whatever it is that I'm supposed to be participating in righteous collaboration. Like, I gotta make this count. Because too many of us, like, the hood ran up on me. Like, literally, I was like, when they ran up, I was like, oh man, it felt like I was in the yard. Like, the hood ran up, and they was like, yo. And you know, it's funny because this is the funny part, right? Because when the hood ran up on me, like, I remember when I worked at New York Presbyterian Hospital at the Weill Cornell campus. I remember because I was getting a great salary. I was called by LIJ to quit working for New York Presbyterian and to work at, when it was called Long Island Jewish Hospital, now it's called North Shore LIJ, right? To come work out there, they wanted to put me over 5 hospitals to do the same thing. Then they said, we'll pay you more money. I said, how much? Put my pink slip in and I went out into the university, right? But the totality of all of this, for me, it's proving that, like, when the hood ran up, and I felt like how I felt when I used to get out. I lived on 138th Street for years in the penthouse apartment. Just ain't have no elevator. When you walking up the steps with groceries and you understand your mama's hands, because you got them same hands that your mama had when she came back with the groceries for you, and you understand you got to go downstairs with the laundry. And like, before I met my wife, it was just 3 of us, 3 children. As soon as I met her, we was the Brady Bunch. But what they said to me was so profound. He said, you know, we don't participate in this political process stuff. But whatever you need, we got you. Just put the word out. We know the streets. And so for me, it was like, yo, this is something different. Folks are beginning to believe in themselves again. And that's what we need. We need that miracle to happen. My mother said that, and I love this, the language and the imagery that it creates. My mother said, we've been waylaid in the melee. I'm like, damn, my mom, that's where I get the rap from, right? Right? But she said, we've been waylaid in the melee. So imagine that person that if you went to Whole Foods on 125th and Malcolm X and you saw the dope fiend no longer leaning but fall, dope fiends ain't never fell. Something else going on. When you see the man rolling around on the floor, yelling out, these still are people. They've been waylaid in the melee. They need to begin to believe in themselves again because the human potential is still there. Watch what happens when they remember who they are. That's the political process. That's why I came back. Because I'm thinking about all of this. And I'm stepping back in, and I used to get, oh, that's the dude, exonerated 5, respect. Now I'm like, yo, I gotta take a photo with you. People done knocked my wife over to get to me. Stepped all on her toes, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's something else going on. But I know, and that's not lost on me. That's why I'm saying, like, that part, coming back, is also us resuscitating our lives. Because if I could do it, if I am the I'm possible and impossible, all of us are there.
We have about 20 minutes, and I see some hands, so we're gonna try to get to each question. Before I do, I wanna give a big shout out. Yeah, more succinct. I do wanna give a big shout out to the NYU Prison Education Program. The African students who are here today. I'm gonna try to go around like this. Yeah.
My question is, we, the Black individuals in this room, we are in the position of being educated and knowing knowledge. So I guess my question comes from the migrant crisis with Africans who are now coming into New York, not knowing the knowledge of the American system, and them still being Black individuals. How do we create community? How do we hold space? How do we see them as our brothers and sisters? Because at the end of the day, that is how America sees them.
Ooh. I'm gonna try to Dr. James Ball.
Right.
He said to be African American is to be African without memory, and American without privilege. So you're in a very special space that has to be acknowledged. You are now charged with being the translator. Because a lot of the stuff of the community, the space, all of that stuff, there was a separation when Africans immigrated to America. And I only know this because when I used to travel around New York City as a young person, when many folks that I knew didn't leave the block, I never had no problems. And I didn't realize the reason why I never had any problems is because they thought I was an immigrant too. So we have to be that, you all are standing in the gap of, we might be able to, this is an opportunity for us to get something. Because they come more organized because they have a connection. Our connection has been severed. And we're doing the work of the possibility of what the American dream could be. But a lot of us know it's the American nightmare. And so, just very succinctly, that part, like being that translator, being the person who helps to navigate the realities, because they don't, trust me, they've been studying what's up. But a lot of them are like, nah, but we African.
I'm African myself too.
Right. And I love when I go to Africa and they say nanga def, and I say mangi fish. Or they say sava, and I say sava bien. And then they keep on going. I'm like, yeah, so that's all I know. But it's that piece which is so beautiful because it's the system don't see them as African. They see them as another black that deserves nothing. But we know better.
Could I, real quick?
Great question. I just really want to add really quickly because I do think that, when we think about immigration and migrants, right, shout out to our African brothers and sisters, but this world is being destabilized, right? And how are we going to hold space for folks that are coming here seeking safety as well and see them as our brothers and sisters and not see them separately? I don't think we're having that conversation, so I just need to feel like we need to name that as well. As someone who comes from a country that was destabilized by American foreign policy, right? So I think yeah, absolutely.
You know what's beautiful about that too, as we go to the next question? That's the conversation.
Yeah.
Now we get the opportunity to really have that conversation on a whole nother level.
And I think Coffiee is really
I recognize that their slave ship is just a little bit different and older than ours. That's it.
So, everybody in here quoting Baldwin, right? So, it took many years of vomiting up all the filth I've been taught about myself and have believed before I was able to walk on earth as though I had a right to be here. James Baldwin. There's another quote from a poet named William Blake, a poet, right? What is now proved was once only imagined. I have a very practical question about mental health because mental health keeps coming up. Divorcing yourself from realities that were taught. Divorcing ourselves from paradigms, right? In meditation, you heard about meditation? We learn that our thoughts are not ourselves. In psychology, we learn that trauma literally rewrites the pathways of the brain and the beliefs that it engenders. In multiple modalities of healing, we either remove or we reinvent our relationships with emotion itself. The idea that we can control things, right? Control emotion. But then there is terminology like neurodiversity, and there are practitioners and theorists like Gabor Mate who are challenging the very idea of normalcy, particularly within this American paradigm that we're all in. Here's my question to y'all. We have someone who often works in the macro in terms of social work, right? The policy end. We have a city councilman, and we have a clinician. What are the specific ways that each of you, and then by extension all of us, could be doing to interrupt, one, the carceral idea of healing and therapy, which has nothing to do with healing and everything to do with compliance, both within agencies and within the carceral system itself. And two, the idea in all of psychology that there is actually one kind of normal in this country that we need to be restoring our clients to regardless of their experience. What are y'all doing to interrupt that idea?
You said we got 10 minutes left?
That's a podcast.
I know, succinct.
Right.
Succinct. I don't know how you do succinct with that one.
I know. I'm gonna echo what Five just said. We gotta have a podcast.
Right.
What you just said was so rich. And we, literally, we all, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now we gotta give what you just said definition. And it got, yeah. Wow.
That podcast will be It's Coffee Time.
So really quickly though, one thing I'll add to that, right, and we think for accountability for all of us, right, trauma is conceptualized of having a post, right? The way we conceive of trauma is having a post. There is no conceptualization for trauma that has not stopped.
That's right.
So I think so how we begin to envision healing and prioritize healing, right? I just want to say that because I think oftentimes when we talk about restoration as a tool of liberation, people don't get that. But if you get and understand the levels of trauma that we all exist under, especially people adjacent to carceral spaces, and what that does to our minds and our bodies, then you'll understand why, setting time aside for restoration and for taking care of ourselves, like Audre Lorde said, is an act of liberation.
Wow. I'm gonna go to the audience. We do have some questions from our online viewers, so we definitely want to thank you guys for tuning in with us. I can ask one now. Thank you for this forum. Social work espouses justice and equity. However, we aren't always taught or practicing with a justice or equity lens. Additionally, the way that social workers and other social service, healthcare professionals, etc., have to navigate many regulations, organizational policies, and practices are not always aligned with our written stated values. Can you speak to how social work educators, practitioners, and advocates can collectively work to ensure that we have the values espoused in the profession and influence the system to be more human, equity, and justice centered? Dr. Kirk, do you want to take?
Yeah, I have a
you
succinct
wanna take that
answer. I
question?
have a super succinct answer for
Okay.
that. I think the first thing you have to understand is that social work, and this is not popular being at NYU, but social work is a corporation. And I think you need to understand that anywhere that the work, the values that we talk about social work has ever been actualized, it's in abolition. It's in communities, it's in like indigenous communities, right? It's never happened in this profession. And I think we need to be accountable to that because it's like we gotta show up different. It doesn't mean that there are not people here that believe in something different, in a different possibility. And those people, then we should be in alliance and we should move that way, we should honor that. But I think we all gotta stop. You talked about truth, right? We all gotta start talking truth. We gotta start, we're seeing it, right? We're seeing police being brought into the campuses. What do you think this is? Right? So I think like that's the first thing. You can't change something till you actually know what it is. And I think that's James Baldwin as well. Yeah.
I promise you. Dr.
Thank you. Blessings, brother. Thank you. It's nice meeting you. I'm going to get right to it. So many things said. And thinking about something from your book, Better or Bitter, that you talked about your grandmother calling you master. You know, and I'm part of a book club, and we just got finished reading it again. But the long and short of what you just said, I'm a creative art therapist. I am not a social worker. Hey, okay. And I use poetry for healing. I'm a poetry therapist licensed by the state of New York. But the bottom line of it is it is not restorative justice, because restore means you're bringing something back in. We have had so much taken away. It's not restoring anything, it's transformative. And Columbia School of Social Work just had the Indigenous Beyond the Bars conference. In that, it was talking about the fact of going back and looking at the hurt and the healing. And then when one person has come out of that trauma and healed, such as yourself, that they can then now go back to the community and help heal others. Right. In the work that I do at Rikers Island, and that's where I work at in the cave, that I use the Nguzo Saba in every group that I do. We have enough tools as people of color to help restore the mind, restore or transform the mind. And I use poetry to help them to change their narrative, to express themselves. But the long and short of it is that in that place, that until we are able to go back and understand that when we were born here, the Mayafa, the soul wound that was created within our people, that the first drug of choice was alcohol. And we've stayed drunk ever since. It was not just a matter of what happened in 1989, 1996. Drugs and alcohol has destroyed and decimated our people forever. And until we get to the understanding of how that soul wound is healed from the inside out, spiritually, spirit, mind, and then body, we will not be able to overcome. If you're coming into my community, you better understand who I am. When on The Godfather they said, give it to the moolies, they're animals anyway. We never protested that. But as soon as we put on Color Purple, everybody was up in flames. Come on, we have to change the way we look at things. And I like what you said, Yusef, Dr. Salaam, that, it is really about looking at and transforming, banging your knuckles up against the wall. That's what we need to do. Bang your knuckles up against the wall so you can feel the life around you, so you know who you are, so you know what's going on around you. Until that happens, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
That's James Baldwin also. Nothing's changed to his face.
Childish Gambino says, stand up. So I'm
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm actually gonna quote James Baldwin.
Go and get that one.
I kind of have a love-hate kind of relationship with this quote, just because it makes me recognize something within myself, being like a black man in this country. But it's to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time. And my question is, how do we, as people of color, people, navigate these emotions of rage without being perceived as the angry black person due to the constraints that we live under, white supremacy, and how do we protect ourselves?
We gotta first tell ourselves we're not crazy.
That's right.
And acknowledge that we have that reality, right? And a lot of the reality that we are really talking about in that space of that quote is that we were removed from all that was. All of it. We were removed from it. And then, and this is like a part of the definition of what the institution says. That's not it. And so for us to be able to acknowledge, look, we ain't crazy. We got real thoughts and we can define some things, but they may try to institutionalize the person inside of the box of crazy. But we gotta know we're not. Because if we don't know that, we're gonna be in the nut house. They're gonna come, lock us up, and you know what I'm saying? Man.
I think also your story is really the answer to that question, right? And I think this is it, right? Like, what are you gonna do with that anger, especially if you know the truth of it, right? Like for everybody, right? Like anger, if you just hold it, Thich Nhat Hanh, right? Like it's gonna burn your hand, right? Like it's a hot coal. But what are you gonna do with it? Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So it's like this is the task ahead. But we really gotta believe. If we don't believe, if we can't see something else, we're not gonna do it. And that's the piece too we gotta talk about, right? Like we can talk about like it feels dark, but we can also know that there's light after dark.
Yes.
And this is it. And many of us have those experiences in our lives, right?
How you doing, brother? This one to ask, because I came from NYU event, not NYU, parts of the John Jay event, and they was talking about mass incarceration and citizen reform. Then I come here and we talking about
No, not you.
then we come here, now I come here and we talking about humanity and freedom, right? And it's ironic that all the individuals on the panel was formerly incarcerated, right? And now you guys are out here. So I'm wondering, how, as policy influencers, right, what is being done, right, to not only imagine freedom, but put things in place for individuals like yourselves that are coming home, because freedom ain't just being released.
That's right.
There's
That's right.
more
Right.
to individuals coming home and seeking freedom, right? You got jobs, you got housing, you got health, you got so many different things, that hurdles that individuals that come home that they need it, right? So I'm wondering what is being done to imagine freedom for those kind of individuals.
I love this question. As a matter of fact, I think that's why I am where I am right now. Just yesterday, I'm standing outside the office. A group was leaving. I was about to go into another meeting. This guy comes up. He's like, "Yo, I wanna give you some good words, poetry, something. I'm homeless. If I could give you some words, maybe you can help me to pay for my night." I said, "Brother, I don't have no time." I said, how much does it cost for you to go somewhere tonight? He said, $15. I said, brother, I got a meeting that I got to jump into right now. Hold on for one moment. Went in the back, came back, gave him what I could. And then I said, and this is why I love your question. I said to my district manager, Shani Herrera, please get this young man's information. We need to help him to get the resources that he needs. Because I didn't get those. Well, first of all, I didn't need the resources like he needed. I needed resources, but I didn't need what he needed. But being in the space of government now, I'm realizing I could tell him go right down the block. There's a place that can make sure he get a home and get some food to eat and get a job. All of that stuff that when we're returned citizens, the only thing, I'm sure most of us, who, like when we was leaving, they said what? They said, see you later.
Yep, till you get back.
What does that mean? That means in the state of New York, if your number began with an R, you came back. If it was an A or a B in the state system, that was the first, that's your bid. But if you got an R, that's recidivism. You left and you came back. So the job and the challenge is, just like you said, and I love it, how do we give us the best chance with the resources? Because a lot of it has to be giving you the opportunity to know that you could stand up. Like you made it this far. I need you to hold on a little longer and stand up, but guess what? Right down the block, tell them the councilman sent you. Because we got those resources. We need to know that stuff. I didn't know those resources was in my community. I just found out. And so now that I know, I can tell other people. Now that I know we got a farm, fresh garden, a whole bunch of them in our community. And they're teaching people how to use the fresh stuff. Because you look at this stuff and you're like, man, I want some McDonald's French fries. You might just take the eggs and throw all of the other health food, medicine out. And the medicine is real food, real carrots, real this, real that, real lettuce, all of that. So,
However, when we have time for one more question, I am so sorry that we were not able to get to everyone, which is why y'all know part 2 is coming up. Or you can find this on iPod, Spotify, with Professor Coffiee on this all the time. Just kidding.
Thank you, Comrade. I appreciate you. I actually just wanted to address this brother's conversation, this brother's question, right? Because rage is a justifiable emotion. It is when I have been violated to my core that I have no other choice but to defend myself, right? But we channel that rage into positive energy by making change with it. When we came home, nobody was paying us. We was getting coffee cups from the students, right? Like, we was teaching classes in colleges and universities. We was creating policies, rallies on our own pockets and our own dimes, then get up and went to work and try to have a little side job, right? But it was that anger that you feel. I lived off of rage. We lived off of that. And sometimes we thought the Carthusis was violence. We thought by letting that rage out that it helped us, but it didn't. But we turned that rage into change, and that's what fuels us still to today. With the concept of balance, because we have to have that. I just wanted to say that to you, brother. Use that rage, and you will change and destroy the system that impacts you. Yes, sir.
My goodness, can I just
Yes, sir.
Can I just add? Thank you for that piece, Dr. Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
You should be angry.
You should be.
But you must not be bitter.
Yes.
Bitterness is a cancer. It eats upon the host. It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure. So use that anger.
Yeah.
You dance it. You march it. You vote it. You do everything about it. And then she said, you talk it. As a young man, I know we don't talk. Young women may talk, girl, I'm about to go to the bathroom, powder my nose.
Right.
We don't ever say, brother, man, I'm about to go to, no, okay, bro, I see where you get back.
Okay.
I see where you But doing something about it. You know why? Because anger is the catapult and the catalyst that causes you to say, in the best of times, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But in the worst of times, it causes you to strategize on a whole nother level because they want you to use that anger so that they can lock you back up.
Right.
But now that we've defined it, we've tasted it, we're like writing it out. We're like mad scientists. We in there. I know what I'm gonna do tonight. I know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. All of that. So I just wanted to. Thank you. Let's hear it for the councilman. Thank you for joining us. One thing I would like to say, I'm also giving my director of Evolved Justice opportunity. One of the things as we do this work at the micro, meso, and macros levels is critically important with the demographics, the communities, and those we all engage in. You cannot do this work without engaging with the communities that are impacted by these systems. And Dr. J, you got any last closing remarks?
I don't, but I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Ben. Thank you for the team that put this together, right? Like when I think about like reimagining justice, it's never an individual thing, right? It's always a collective thing. So there's always a collective community that we're working with. We may not see each other all the time, right? But like this work has to happen in community. So find your communities, find your spaces, be restored. The last thing I'd say to you is act. Right? Like we can't be talking this liberation stuff if we're not acting. It's a privilege if you're not acting. It's a privilege if you're not speaking. It's a privilege if you're not uncomfortable right now. You know? So real talk. I think like we all gotta like, you know, act. This is a moment to act. So thank you everyone for coming out, supporting.